Okay, welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. Like I told you, I got lots of guests today. I got lots of subject matters we got to cover. The Boyd case is obviously a fascinating case. We're going to get back to that and other matters. But you know the news of the day is the Jeffrey Epstein developments, if you will call them that, found dead in his cell, ending the criminal prosecution. There is a picture right there. I've been very vocal about this across many networks and many writings that I have done because the victims have been denied an opportunity yet a second time at the hands of federal officials in different ways. The Miami Herald did a little expose, if you will, with respect to the victims. Let's take a quick look at that.
We were little girls.
I was 16.
I was 16.
I started going to him when I was like 14 turning 15.
If you think at 14, $200, that's a lot of money at 14 years old. I mean, that's a lot of money now.
She's like, oh, do you need to make any extra money? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, I can give you, like $200. It's this older guy in Palm Beach. He gets a lot of massages from girls. That was really.
They were recruited by someone who was adept at finding girls that would be willing to, go to a house for a few $100s, and as it started out, give a man a back rub, but many cases it turned into something far worse than that, elevated to a crime, and a serious crime, in some cases sexual batteries.
My life would have been different if I would have never went to Jeffrey Epstein's house. It was just a dark turning point in my life.
On June 30th, 2008, Jeffrey Epstein, a Palm Beach multimillionaire hedge fund manager, received what might have been the most lenient plea deal for a serial sex offender in U.S. history. The Miami Herald identified over 60 of his victims, just young middle and high school girls at the time of the abuse. More than a decade later, several of them are talking for the first time about how they were molested by Epstein and believe they were betrayed by the very prosecutors who were supposed to hold Epstein accountable.
Oh, wow. An amazing case, and I got an amazing panel to discuss it. In studio, the great, fabtabulous awesomeness of Julie Rendelman from the Law and Crime Network. Julie, welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a while. And we got Roger still with us and Gene. Roger, I want to start with you because you're from this neck of the woods here. Talk to us a little bit about, like, just anecdotally, what's going on in the community with regard to Epstein for all these years and through this plea offer that, if you even want to call it a plea offer, this ridiculous, corrupted plea offer. What's the sentiment of what's going on down there in Palm Beach County?
I think it's just the main fact that everyone didn't know about this plea deal. I mean, when you're alleged to have had several victims the way Jeffrey Epstein did, and to get basically a year, 13 months of house arrest, that's just not the usual. Now, you always look for someone who does a great job lawyering, but this is sort of an extraordinary circumstance. This seems to be, at least in my opinion, more than extraordinary lawyering here. This seems to be something shady that shouldn't have been done.
Roger, I'm going to go back to you because you know the environment. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions on cross-examination, if you don't mind, sir.
Shoot.
Okay. Number one, how many times in the middle of a criminal case that you have been dealing with have you met the prosecutor in a hotel in order to discuss your client's case?
Never. Zero.
Zero. Okay. And in how many cases that you have dealt with where there are state crimes that are alleged, has the U.S. Attorney's Office worked out a plea agreement for state charges?
Zero as well.
Right. And how many cases have you handled down there where they had a 53-page indictment ready to drop on a case which is pretty much the magnitude of sex trafficking and human trafficking? You can't get much better than this. That turns out into a non-prosecution agreement.
It just never happens.
I mean, no, honestly, I've been very critical of this, Roger, and each place is different. But I work in federal, I work in state. I see this as being complete corruption, meeting lawyers off-site, all of a sudden non-prosecution agreements on the federal side, and working out a plea deal for the state. Hey, I was the head prosecutor for county. There ain't no way someone's coming in telling me what the plea is going to be in my county.
This was a little bit before my time when they did this, the former prosecutor. But this just doesn't happen. I mean, so that's why people are talking. This is an allegation of corruption. And I think that as we find out, as the news sources do their investigations and the FBI and whoever else is going to do investigations, we're going to find out a lot more, and we're going to look into this corruption. And who knows, charges may be filed against ex-prosecutors. I don't know how they're going to deal with it.
Well, nobody better to talk to us about federal prosecutors than Gene Rossi, who spent 30 years at the DOJ and probably trained over 1,000. Maybe some of those folks are still active and going to be dealing with these cases. Gene, on that level, I mean, do you think that there could be a potential investigation into Mr. Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney, and or an investigation as it relates to what happened in the jail that ultimately led to Epstein's demise? Anything you want to talk about? Tell us how this is going to be handled federally.
Well, I could just tell you I trained a few prosecutors that were and still are in the Miami U.S. Attorney's Office. I will not mention their names, but I'm pretty sure they didn't work on this disgraceful arrangement. Number one, I never, absolutely never, backed off from a 54-page indictment or even a half-a-page indictment and let the state take it, unless, Bob, I got cooperation from that defendant. And that didn't happen here. So I don't know if there was any quid pro quo, public corruption. It sure smells like that. Maine Justice will probably do an internal investigation, either Office of Professional Responsibility or the IG. Now let's go to Jeffrey Epstein. When I was working at Maine Justice in the tax division, I had to do a memo every Friday of my major cases. And that went up to the Assistant Attorney General for the tax division. I can tell you this right now, Bob, there are probably about 5 to 10 people in Maine Justice, including the Attorney General, who are getting weekly updates, if not daily updates, on the equivalent of El Chapo. Jeffrey Epstein was El Chapo, period. And they were monitoring everything that was going on in that jail. Now, do I think that somebody killed Jeffrey Epstein? No. But I think they gave him the opportunity to take his life by recklessness, deliberate ignorance, willful blindness, and heads have to roll. This is disgraceful, not only for the justice system, for the hundreds of victims, not 10, not 20. There are hundreds of victims who need justice.
Okay, Julie, let me go to you. I mean, as a former prosecutor that had a prolific career trying high-profile cases and felonies. In fact, I think you were one of the assistant deputies of the homicide unit over there in Brooklyn. I mean, you've been around the block in terms of these high-profile cases. I mean, you know the ins and outs of it. Yeah. Now you're a criminal defense lawyer. So some people will say to us, well, why are you complaining as a criminal defense lawyer about the fact that he got this sweetheart deal? I mean, isn't that what you try to do? And my response to them, Julie, has been, no, the problem with it is that, to me, it was being done as Acosta was on his way out. They met off campus because of whether he was looking for a job or looking to feather his nest, I don't know. But now I have defendants that I represent who do things far less than that get far more time. And how do I explain that to them?
But that's exactly the problem. And let's not forget, this wasn't just federal agencies that did wrong. If you remember, the accusation also is that the New York County District Attorney's Office had a SORA hearing. And at that hearing, they asked for him to be lower than he should have been. And there's still not been a full explanation. The judge had to basically say, why are you giving him a 1 when he's a 2 when it came to sexually registering as a sex offender? So even there's some questions involving the state as to their behavior in terms of Mr. Epstein.
And actually, let's take that one step further. In Florida, there's also allegations. Initially, this was a state prosecution. The law enforcement community felt that the case was being scuttled, so they alerted the FBI about the case, who did a further deep dive and started preparing that 53-page indictment. And then the U.S. attorney works out this state court deal. But let's be honest, that deal doesn't go through unless that state prosecutor agrees to it.
I agree. And let me just go back to one of the things you said, when you talk about how do you explain it to your clients. That's the problem. You can't explain it to your clients. We have clients that have money. We have clients that don't have money. And we expect that the U.S. attorney is going to treat each of them the same, that the money is not relevant to the decision making. And to me, it seems like along the way, whether it be politics or power or money or a combination of all of them, Jeffrey Epstein kind of skirted through. And part of the reason I think he did was because if he was held to task for what he had done, then his head would not be the only one rolling. There would have been many individuals that have been named, many political people that we hear about left and right that have been named that kind of would have gone down with him, which is why people are asking questions now. It seems interesting that he never had a chance to proffer. Instead, he ends up dead in a federal penitentiary.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to ask you guys real quick before we shoot off this topic, but I think it's important. Gene, you kind of alluded to the idea, and I think whether it's willful negligence or willfulness, if you will, or outright recklessness, or turn your head and look the other way, I don't believe in the huge conspiracy theory pieces to it, but there could definitely be something like maybe, perhaps, Epstein is giving something out there to somebody as an incentive to turn the other way while he was able to kill himself. But Gene, let me start with you. If he did proffer, as Julie talks about, would he have been able to proffer himself if he had some great information with some high-level players? Would he be able to proffer himself out in a way where he still would have avoided or been able to ever get out of jail anytime during his natural life?
Let me tell you this. If somebody is willing to give me dead bodies, other people, in exchange for a little bit of credit for cooperation, not a lot, but a little bit, I would have taken it. Because he probably has so much information about so many people at the highest level, you have to take that information and see if you can corroborate it. That's the key word, corroborate. But I would take his cooperation. I wouldn't give him a big break, but I'd give him a little bit, just a little bit, and I'd clear it with the victims. I'd clear it with the victims.
Roger Foley, do you agree with that analysis? And if so, I guess getting to Julie's point, is it that the feds just didn't have an opportunity to cultivate that information at this point in time because of his suicide, if that's what it is?
It seems to me that they would have had enough time, regardless if he was in custody. I don't know how long he was in custody on these new charges, but, the fact that he has all this information, there was plenty of time to ask these questions. And like what Gene said, I think he would have gotten some cooperation, but whether or not that happened, who knows? Maybe he did share information. We don't know.
Okay, real quick, each one of you, yes or no. There are other individuals who are alleged to have been responsible in this criminal conspiracy to assist this heinous and outrageous conduct that was allowed to continue. If you will there be prosecutions of other individuals? Roger, yes or no?
Yes.
How about you, Gene?
Yes, 4.
Julie?
Yes, I don't have a number.
Okay. Well, at least that's yes, and that's an important thing because these victims do deserve their day in court. They will have civil opportunities as well, and hopefully we'll be able to get some information from the Inspector General with regard to what went down with this Acosta deal. Guys, great panel, great topic. We do it all here at the Law&Crime Network. We're not just gavel to gavel on trials. We got these great panels to talk about all the cutting-edge legal issues. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.